Before I begin, let me say this clearly. If you enjoy real, unsettling horror stories that stay with you long after the video ends, like the video, share it with someone who loves dark stories, and subscribe to the channel. And while you're here, tell me in the comments which city or country you're watching from, and what time it is right now. I read more of those than you might think. My name is Caleb Rowan, and I've been driving a truck across this country for nearly 13 years. Long enough to know that the road has moods, long enough to recognize when a stretch of highway feels ordinary, and when it feels like it's watching you back. I haul freight for distribution centers that never shut down. Food, dry goods, supplies that keep shelves stocked so families don't have to think about where things come from. I don't mind the work. It pays well enough, and it keeps my mind busy. I've got a wife at home and a kid who's already asking questions I don't always have answers to. Tuition isn't cheap, and pride doesn't cover bills. So I stay moving. Most nights it's just me, the hum of the engine, and miles of road that all start to blur together after a while. People ask if driving gets boring. It doesn't. It gets familiar. You learn patterns, which exits are worth trusting, which stops treat drivers like people instead of problems. You stop gambling on new places and return to the ones that don't let you down. That's how routines form. And routines are where strange things like to hide. For me, one of those routines revolved around a diner just off a long, quiet stretch of highway cutting through the western states. I won't use its real name. It doesn't deserve that anymore. The place sat far enough from the road. The traffic noise faded into the background. The sign out front was old, metal faded, paint cracked, with a smiling cartoon woman holding a coffee pot, like she'd been frozen in time. The lights buzzed faintly at night, but they always stayed on. I'd been stopping there for a few years, whenever my routes lined up. Never once saw it closed. Inside, nothing matched. The booths were vinyl and worn thin, patched more than once. Tables rocked if you leaned too hard. There was a jukebox in the corner that barely worked, cycling through the same few songs like it didn't know anything else existed. No one fixed it. That was just how the place sounded now. But the food made up for all of it. The pancakes were real, not uniform, not perfect. Edges uneven, butter soaking in the way it's supposed to. Coffee that came hot and stayed coming without you having to ask twice. For someone who lives on carbs and caffeine, it felt like a small reward for long hours on the road. I usually stopped late, sometimes closer to midnight, sometimes much later. The staff never made a thing of it. Same waitresses most nights. Same nod of recognition when I walked in. After a while, I didn't even need to order out loud. Pancakes, extra butter, coffee. That was my routine. It took longer than it should have for me to notice anything was off. There was a booth near the back wall, 7th from the counter if you counted carefully. I'd passed it dozens of times without paying attention. Then one night, I realized someone was always sitting there. A man. He wore a long coat no matter the season. Dark, heavy fabric that didn't look comfortable. A brimmed hat pulled low. Sunglasses thick enough that you couldn't see his eyes at all. He always had a newspaper spread out in front of him, folded the same way, hands resting at the edges, like he'd practiced the posture. At first, I assumed he was just another regular. Every diner has one. Someone who's always there but never memorable enough to stand out. Except, he didn't change. I came in at different hours, on different days, sometimes weeks apart. And there he was. Same booth, same clothes, same paper, Same stillness. I never saw him eat. Curiosity gets sharper when you're alone for most of your life. So one night, I asked the waitress. Her name was Maribel, and she'd been there longer than I had. I nodded toward the back and asked if the guy ever left. She barely glanced over before shrugging. "He's waiting on someone," she said, like she'd answered that question too many times to care anymore. According to her, he always ordered black coffee. No additions. He'd sit there for hours, settle his tab, and be gone before anyone noticed. Then, eventually, he'd be back. No one knew who he was waiting for. I stopped asking questions after that. Then I noticed his arms. If you passed his booth on the way to the restroom, you could see where the sleeves pulled back slightly. Dark patches of skin, uneven and discolored. They looked old. Not fresh. Not healed either. He didn't hide them. He didn't acknowledge them. That should have been enough for me to keep my distance. One night, as I was leaving, I saw him stand. He moved stiffly, like his body didn't like changing positions. As he passed by, something slipped from his briefcase and hit the floor near my boots. He didn't notice. He pushed through the door and disappeared into the night. I picked it up. It was a brochure. Old. Paper yellowed, print faded but readable. It advertised a backyard shelter, reinforced walls, long-term supplies, protection for families. The kind of thing people worried about generations ago. The dates on it were decades out of place. I waited. He didn't come back, so I folded it and slipped it into my jacket, figuring I'd return it if I saw him again. That night, I stood outside the diner longer than usual, coffee cooling in my hands, staring up at a sky that felt too open. Away from city lights, the stars looked sharper, closer. I remember thinking about my next delivery, inventory placement, deadlines, normal thoughts, comforting ones. When I rounded the side of the building, the lights were dimmer. That's when I saw him again. He stood near the dumpsters, posture wrong, coat hanging loose like it didn't belong on his frame anymore. He was bent forward at an angle that made my stomach tighten. I told myself it was nothing. People carry pain in strange ways. I took a step closer. Before I could say anything, he bent further and expelled something onto the pavement. It wasn't liquid. It came out thick, black, piling onto itself before it began to move. It shifted against the concrete with a weight that didn't make sense. I froze. He straightened slowly, wiped his mouth with a handkerchief like this was routine. His glasses slipped just enough for me to see what was underneath. There were too many eyes. They didn't move together. I pressed myself flat against the wall as he turned, adjusted his glasses, and walked past me without changing pace. I didn't breathe until I heard a vehicle start. When I looked back, the black mass was still there. It slid toward the shadows between the bins and disappeared. I didn't finish my coffee. I didn't say goodbye. I got in my truck and left. I told myself I wouldn't be back. I was wrong. I didn't sleep after that night. I parked at a rest area 2 hours down the highway, cut the engine, and sat there with my hands on the wheel until dawn crept up behind the trees. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that thing sliding across the concrete like it was looking for a place to belong. Every time I blinked, I expected to see him standing in front of my truck, coat hanging wrong, glasses tilted just enough. I told myself exhaustion can make the brain invent details. That fear fills in gaps you don't remember leaving open. But the smell stayed with me, even after I showered at the next stop, even after I changed clothes. It lingered in the cab like something had soaked into the upholstery itself. Bitter. Metallic. Not rotten. Older than that. Like dust pulled out of a sealed room. I finished the run on autopilot. Signed paperwork. Dropped the trailer. Shook hands with people whose faces I couldn't recall minutes later. By the time I pulled into my driveway, my wife said I looked like I'd aged a year. I didn't tell her why. I didn't tell anyone. Some things sound weaker when you say them out loud. They lose whatever authority they had in your head. And I needed this to stay contained. Manageable. For weeks, I adjusted my routes to avoid that stretch of highway. Took longer paths. Burned extra fuel. Told dispatch I preferred certain corridors. They didn't argue. Drivers have their quirks. No one questions them as long as deliveries land on time. And for a while, it worked. Then the dreams started. Always the same setting. The diner, but emptier. No hum from the lights. No jukebox noise. The booth stretched farther than they should, like the room had learned how to grow when no one was watching. I'd walk past table after table until I reached the back booth. The newspaper would be there. Folded. Waiting. I never saw the man in the dreams, but I always woke up knowing he had been close. I started noticing small things on the road. Cars behind me that stayed too long. Headlights that vanished when I slowed down. Reflections in side mirrors that didn't line up with what should have been there. You get used to checking mirrors when you drive for a living. It becomes instinct. Instinct kept telling me something was wrong. One night, 3 months after I swore I'd never go back, dispatch rerouted me due to an accident ahead. Only one viable detour. Same stretch of highway. Same exit. I argued. Harder than I should have. Told them I'd wait it out. They told me the load was time sensitive. I took the exit. The diner sign was lit when I saw it. Same buzzing lights. Same smiling cartoon woman. No cars in the lot except one parked near the back. I didn't slow down. But my fuel gauge dipped lower than it should have. Faster than it ever had before. By the time I reached the next stretch of nothing, the warning light came on. I coasted to the shoulder, heart hammering, and killed the engine. Silence pressed in around me, the kind that makes you aware of your own breathing. I sat there, staring forward, already knowing how this would end. I didn't even fight it when I turned the key and felt the engine cough back to life, just long enough to limp into the diner lot. The door chimed when I stepped inside. Same smell of grease and coffee. Same counter, same booths, but fewer people. Maribel stood behind the counter, wiping a mug. She smiled when she saw me, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Long time," she said. I nodded, throat dry. "You still open all night?" She paused, just for a second. "Always," she said. The back booth was occupied. Same man, same coat, same newspaper. I didn't sit. I ordered coffee out of habit and took it to a booth closer to the door. I kept my eyes forward, but I felt him the way you feel pressure change before a storm. After a few minutes, the chair across from me scraped back. He sat without asking. Up close, the smell was stronger. The coat looked heavier, like it absorbed things. The sunglasses were scratched now, lenses cloudy, like they'd been cleaned with the wrong cloth too many times. "You took something," he said. His voice sounded like it had to travel a long way to reach his mouth. I knew what he meant. I reached into my jacket and pulled out the brochure. It felt warmer than it should have. I slid it across the table. He placed his hand over it and didn't move for a long moment. "You saw," he said. I didn't answer. He leaned forward slightly. The glasses slipped again. I didn't look directly, but I caught movement where movement shouldn't be. Depth where depth didn't belong. It doesn't stop once it notices you, he continued. It waits. It learns. My coffee trembled in the cup. What is it? I asked. He smiled, not with his mouth. Leftovers, he said, from places people thought were sealed. He told me about shelters built decades ago, about families who believed concrete and steel could outlast anything, about how some spaces stayed closed long enough for other rules to apply inside them. When they opened those doors, he said softly, some things came out hungry. He stood abruptly, chair tipping back. Several heads turned, then quickly turned away again like they'd been trained not to notice. He leaned down close enough that I felt his breath against my ear. You fed it attention, he whispered. That's how it follows. Then he was gone. I left cash on the table and walked out without looking back. Behind the diner, near the dumpsters, the pavement was clean. Too clean. Like it had never been touched. My truck started without hesitation. I drove until sunrise burned the horizon pale and swore again I wouldn't return. That night, at home, I found something under my sink. A thin black smear trailing from the back wall toward the drain. It moved when I turned the light on. I didn't clean the smear right away. I stood there in the kitchen, light buzzing above me, watching it react to brightness like it had nerves. It didn't move fast. It didn't need to. It behaved like something that knew time favored it. When I grabbed paper towels and reached toward it, the smear thinned, pulling itself back toward the dark space under the cabinet. I shut the door and backed away. That was the first lie I told myself. If I don't see it, it's not real. The second lie was worse. It'll stay here. I slept in my truck that night, parked outside my own house like a stranger afraid to knock. Dawn didn't bring relief. It only made everything look normal again, and normal felt wrong now. Thin. Fragile, like paint over rot. I called dispatch and asked for long hauls, middle of nowhere routes, open roads where nothing should follow. They gave me one that ran through agricultural land, miles of flat earth, broken by silos and fields that never seemed to end. A place so empty it didn't even have proper signage. The map on my phone lost signal early, leaving me with a blue dot floating over beige nothing. That should have been my cue to turn around. The town appeared without warning. No welcome sign, no gas station marquee, just a cluster of low buildings pressed together, as if bracing against something unseen. The road narrowed as I entered. Asphalt patched so many times it resembled scar tissue. I slowed. Windows faced the street, but no one stood behind them. No cars passed me. The place felt paused, like a scene waiting for its cue. I told myself I'd drive straight through. The smell hit first. Not decay, not waste. Something old and sealed that had been opened recently. The same undertone I'd noticed since the diner, only stronger here, as if the air itself had been stored somewhere it shouldn't have been. I saw movement near a grain elevator, a shape slipping along the base, hugging shadow. It flattened when my headlights brushed it, becoming indistinct, like oil spread thin over concrete. I didn't stop. At the far end of town, the road dipped. My engine stuttered. The fuel gauge dropped again, faster than physics allowed. I cursed and coasted forward until the truck shuddered to a halt beside a small service station that looked like it had been built from leftovers of other buildings. The door was open. Inside, a man stood behind the counter, hands folded. He was tall, narrow, and still in a way that felt practiced. "You're early," he said. "I'm not stopping," I replied, though I hadn't moved. He smiled gently. "No one ever is." Behind him, the wall was lined with old photographs, families, workers. Group shots taken in front of the grain elevator, the same elevator I'd seen movement near. In every photo, the background looked wrong. Too deep. Too dark. "You don't belong here," I said. He tilted his head. "Neither do you. But it followed you." My skin prickled. What followed me? He stepped aside and gestured toward a door behind the counter. It led down. "You should see what attention does," he said. I should have refused. I should have walked away and left the truck behind if I had to. Instead, I went down. The stairs were concrete, narrow, and sloped deeper than the building above should have allowed. The air grew heavier with each step. Lights buzzed overhead, casting shadows that clung to the walls longer than they should. At the bottom was a chamber carved directly into earth, reinforced. Old. The kind of place built by people who believed the world could end quietly if they hid well enough. The walls were stained, not with blood, with something darker, thicker. It pulsed faintly, as if remembering motion. Shapes clung to the corners, flattened, stretched remnants of things that had once had volume. They didn't move much. They didn't need to. Their presence alone pressed against my thoughts, whispering impressions rather than words. The man stood beside me, unbothered. "We kept it contained for a long time," he said, "until someone opened a door they didn't understand." I recognized one of the shapes, not visually, emotionally. It carried the same hollow patience as the thing from the diner. "It learned from you," the man continued. "Roads are good teachers. So are people who travel alone." Something shifted behind us. A presence slid forward, detaching itself from the wall, like a shadow peeling free. It wasn't fully formed. It didn't need to be. It leaned toward me, reacting to recognition. I felt it then, how much of my attention I'd given it, how often I'd replayed that night, how fear had kept it fed. The man grabbed my arm. "You have to leave," he hissed. "Now, before it finishes learning your shape." We ran. The stairs felt steeper on the way up. The lights flickered, shadows stretching and collapsing like lungs. Behind us, the chamber filled with a soundless pressure that made my ears ache. We burst into the station. The town outside looked unchanged, still empty, still waiting. "Drive," the man said, "and don't come back." "What about you?" I asked. He smiled sadly. "We're already part of it." My truck roared to life like it had been waiting for this moment. I didn't look back as I tore out of town, the road widening behind me as if relieved to be used again. I drove until my hands went numb. When I finally stopped, miles later, the sky was lightening at the horizon. The world looked ordinary again. Too ordinary. At home, the smear under my sink was gone. In its place was something worse. A faint indentation in the wall, shaped like it had learned how to lean. I should have stopped driving. I should have burned the truck and walked into the nearest town that actually existed on the map. But instinct, or stubbornness, or whatever it is that keeps people alive long enough to make mistakes, kept me moving. The road stretched before me like an artery, pale light seeping through clouds as dawn refused to fully commit. Every mile felt borrowed, every turn temporary. I didn't want to acknowledge it, but I knew the thing from the diner, the smear under my sink, and the town that wasn't on any map were not separate. They were connected, stitched together by the attention I had given them. And attention is dangerous. I drove past the familiar highway markers that led to nowhere familiar, the landscape turning sterile and gray, the way it always does when perception starts to warp. The road grew thinner. Fences ran alongside it, but they were broken. sagging as if surrendering to gravity and time. Shadows clung too tightly to the corners of fields. The air smelled metallic, and every so often, my tires kicked up a substance. They looked like dust, but clung like powdery ash, settling on the dashboard, on my hands. I tried to keep my mind busy. I recited every mundane fact I could recall about trucks, engines, and freight schedules. Numbers, sequences, schedules. Anything solid. The shape, I realized, could not absorb something that had concrete form. But the moment I allowed a memory to linger, of the diner, of that smear, of the town, it reacted. The truck wobbled on a straight stretch of asphalt, not because of wind, not because of a mechanical issue, but because the road itself seemed to respond to thought. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time had become unreliable. The GPS flickered once, then died. Phone service vanished. Even the sky seemed hesitant to commit to a color. Gray clouds curling unnaturally, forming gaps that suggested more than they revealed. Then I saw it. At first, I thought it was a billboard. But as I drew closer, I realized it was not a sign but a frame. A large rectangle standing in the middle of the road, not anchored, just there. In its edges, the world behind it seemed distorted, stretched, and darker. I could see my own reflection, or what I thought was my reflection, but it moved slightly out of sync with me, a puppet mimicking attention with a subtle delay. I should have turned around. I didn't. As I drove closer, the shape, if I could call it that, shifted, bending toward the truck. I felt the familiar tug at the edge of my awareness, a whispering pull at attention that made the hair on my neck rise. I understood in that moment that it was learning faster now. It was studying more than my shape. It was studying my fear, my hesitation, my very thought patterns. My hands tightened on the wheel. I spoke aloud, trying to anchor myself. You don't exist. You can't exist. You're a hallucination. You're dust and shadow, and nothing more. The shape tilted, almost like it was acknowledging me, and then, for a brief instant, it split, forming multiple overlapping outlines of itself. Each one leaned closer. I glimpsed what looked like fragments of other people. Faces I didn't recognize, distorted, suspended in darkness. All of them watching, waiting, learning. I slammed the brakes. The truck skidded. Tires screamed. I felt the shape push back against the vehicle, not physically, but perceptually, like gravity itself had changed under its weight. I jumped out, heart hammering, and the road behind me seemed to twist, folding into itself. The asphalt warped and pulled into the frame, then snapped back as if nothing had happened, leaving a slick surface with faint impressions of figures. Panic drove me further. I ran to the edges of the road, searching for something, anything, that would look familiar. Trees, rocks, a fence, but nothing registered. Everything felt borrowed, like I was walking through someone else's memory of a landscape. I heard it then. Not a sound as humans perceive it, but a vibration inside my skull. Knowledge, recognition. It was the accumulation of all the attention I had ever given, compressed into pressure. The pressure didn't ask for permission. It demanded. It was there because I had seen, because I had remembered, because I had cared, even a little. I understood that night, in a way that cannot be unlearned. What follows you is what you allow to notice you. Attention is not neutral. Attention is binding. The diner, the smear, the town. They weren't anomalies. They were consequences of the shape learning from me, shaping itself to my patterns, copying my habits, waiting for moments of weakness. The truck's headlights flickered, and in that flicker, the world shifted completely. I was no longer on the road. I was on a flat surface, gray and featureless, with no horizon. The rectangle frame was gone, replaced by a horizonless void that stretched endlessly. And there it was, fully formed now. Not a smear, not a shadow, not a collection of fragments, but a shape aware, responsive, and patient. It leaned closer. I could see a texture beneath it, folds, lines, an organic sheen that made my stomach twist. I realized it had been building itself slowly, gathering everything I had ever focused on, everything I had feared, every thought about the diner, the smear, the town. It had learned me. I backed away instinctively. My feet sank slightly into the gray ground. The shape moved with me, maintaining a constant distance. Not too close, not too far, like it had measured everything precisely. And then I heard the man's voice from the service station echo in my memory. Before it finishes learning your shape. I understood. It didn't want to hurt me. It wanted to become me, to integrate my attention fully. If it did, I would vanish, not as a body, but as presence, as recognition, as existence. I would be absorbed, reduced to a reference, a memory within it. I ran. But running meant nothing. The void didn't allow distance. I tried to look away. My mind screamed to focus on something else, anything else. But the shape mirrored every thought, every attempt to ignore it. Then I remembered the one thing the man said that night in the station's basement. Roads are good teachers. So are people who travel alone. Roads. Roads are its tutors, its guides. I closed my eyes and pictured a road, the familiar route from my home to the diner, a loop I knew intimately. I visualized it fully. Pavement, lines, horizon, the subtle smell of gasoline and asphalt. I projected it with everything I had. When I opened my eyes, I was back on a road. The shape was there, but its form flickered, uncertain. My attention had given it rules. My focus could guide it. I had no idea how long it would last, but for the first time I felt control. I drove. Hours later, or maybe days, the world began to feel coherent again. Trees had texture, asphalt had grain. The sun finally committed to a pale yellow. My truck was fine. No strange fuel fluctuations, no whispers, nothing beyond the ordinary hum of a highway. I didn't go home. Not yet. I drove to nowhere familiar, to a motel on a standard map, and parked. I left the lights off and didn't unpack. My reflection in the window stared back at me, solid, present, unmistakably mine. But I know it's out there. I feel it sometimes in the edges of vision, or when I zone out in a diner, or glance at a darkened street. The shape waits, patient, learning, growing with every attention it absorbs. Every thought I give it feeds it further. And I have learned the one thing you cannot unlearn: curiosity, observation, memory, and attention. They are not free. They come with a cost. The more you give, the more you create. And some creations once noticed never leave you. I am still on the road, still moving, still aware. And somewhere, in the shadows of other places, it waits, watching, learning.